Welcome to Kicks and Minivans, the podcast for dads who love sneakers. I'm your host, KG. However you're watching and listening, man, we are glad you're here. Thank you for tuning in, jumping in with us. Hey, we went through a rough couple episodes, not rough, but deep, challenging topics to tackle, to address. And so, man, if you were tuning in through those, greatly appreciate you. If you are dealing in a season where you are dealing with some porn addiction, some mental health issues, I really encourage you, go back. We did 4 episodes in a row, kind of a little series on dealing with those issues. Had some great guests on to talk about some of those things. And so I believe it's episodes 25 through 28 of this podcast. And so, hey, they will be up. Hopefully, they will be of use and a benefit to you moving forward. Before we jump any further into this episode, I want to shout out the kick of the week. It is this one, the Jordan 1 high top taxis. If you are watching on YouTube, if you're watching on YouTube, there's like 5 of you. The vast majority of you guys are listening on Apple and Spotify, which is, I listen to my podcast on Apple. I'm like one of the only people in the world that doesn't use YouTube as a consumer, right? And I post on YouTube I feel like I'm just supposed to post, and there's like 5 of you that listen, and it's like I know who all 5 of you are too. And so shout out to all y'all on YouTube, on the YouTube channel that are listening there. We appreciate you guys. And everyone listening on Apple and Spotify and any other listening platforms out there, we appreciate all of y'all. Like 98% of you are on Apple and Spotify though. So but yeah, the Jordan 1 taxis, these are one of my favorite pair of Jordan 1s. I have probably about 10 to 12 pair of Air Jordan 1s. Outside of my Hyper Royals, which at this point, those might be my favorite sneaker. Like if I had to boil it down and say you could keep one pair of sneakers, it might be my Hyper Royal 1s. But after those, these get the most wear and use out of any of my Jordan 1s, I think. And so they are matching my God-Sized Goals t-shirt that I'm rocking right now. I have no idea where this shirt came from. It just showed up in the mail. The sender was the sending address was kind of like blotched out that I couldn't make out who it was. There was nothing in the bag. So if you're listening and you sent me this shirt, let me know so I can thank you properly, because I reached out to a couple people that I thought it might have been, and they're like, nah, that wasn't me. So I have no idea where this shirt came from, but I loved it. We got some God-Sized Goals we're chasing after. Thank you for sticking around, being a part, and listening. Hopefully this is a beneficial podcast to you guys. And I know, like I said, we talked about some tough topics, right? Mental health and the porn addiction. We're going to be starting another kind of series today. We're not going to go all the way through the whole thing. We'll kind of do episodes here and there, kind of get some different interviews that have nothing to do with this series. But in this series, we're going to be walking through a passage in the Bible in 1 Corinthians that I think kind of spells out kind of perfectly what we should be striving to be as husbands and as fathers. This is a podcast that exists to help men win in marriage and parenting, and we want to do just that. And we believe that helping men get to their healthiest place is a significant way to help you win in marriage and parenting, because the healthier you are, the better husband, the better father you're going to be. And so we are going to be spending, there will be several different episodes kind of walking through this passage in 1 Corinthians that kind of spells out what it looks like to be a good loving husband and a good loving father. Before we jump into that, one other quick announcement, and then we got Mrs. Kicks on for another draft. But there is the platform that I use is something called Spreaker, and that distributes the podcast out to all the channels except for YouTube. We upload that separately. But if you're listening on Apple or Spotify or Google or any of those other platforms, we use Spreaker as kind of a distribution channel for those. And they now offer something on their Spreaker mainframe that allows listeners to go and financially support the podcast that they are listening to. And so if this podcast has been a blessing to you in any sort of way, or if you love the mission and you just want to support, because this podcast is not a free podcast to put together, right? We are paying money out of our pocket each month in order to kind of keep this thing going. But I believe in it. I believe in what we're called to do right now. And so if it is something that has been a blessing to you, or you believe the mission and you want to back it and you're in a place to do so financially, there is a link in the show notes, whether on YouTube or on a different platform, to be able to go to and contribute. There's only one setting on it. It is set at $10 a month. That you can start it, you can end it anytime. There's no contract or nothing like that, and absolutely no pressure. Podcasts are free for the listeners. This is a free thing for people to listen to, with the realization that it does cost money to put out and put together. And if you believe in the mission and you want to support that, then we would appreciate it. And so just wanted to let you know about that. There is an option on Spreaker to create exclusive content that is just for contributors and supporters. We don't know what that content would be yet. So if you are someone that is considering being a supporter and you have ideas of like, hey, this would be really beneficial content or really fun content to listen to, just shoot us a message, let us know, and we'll put that in the brainstorming sessions of things we can put together. So before we get into the teaching now, let us jump in with Mrs. Kicks for another draft. This time we are doing side dishes. As we're coming up with draft ideas, like all the ideas that we have come back to food. And maybe it's because I think about food so much, but yeah, we got some different ideas. If you have any ideas for drafts you want to see us go at with each other, leave us a comment, let us know. We would love to do that. But let's jump into this one.
All right, very simple, but can go with many things. Warm bread and butter.
That's
Very
decent.
comforting.
That's decent. You fumbled though.
Why?
There's a clear number one in sides, and it's French fries. French fries is the ultimate side dish. It is the ultimate side dish. There's so many different varieties. You can do a whole draft just on types of French fries.
That's true.
We should do that. French
I had
fries
cheesy
some places.
fries, but I can't use it now.
See, but just plain French fries. That's my number one.
All right, solid. I'm gonna go with cheesy potatoes.
Ooh, those are good. So you're not going to do cheesy French fries, but you'll do cheesy potatoes.
It could be in a casserole. It could be a loaded baked potato. It could be loaded mashed potatoes. It could have the crumbly crunchies on top, baked in the oven.
I mean, all good, but again, you fumbled because the second best side is macaroni and cheese.
See, I debated that. But when I think of mac and cheese, I think of it as a meal, not a
because
snack.
My mac and cheese is so good, you can eat it as a meal.
Yep.
Like it can be the entree. However, it's typically a side.
Well,
so
not in our household.
Fair. However,
but yes,
I'm taking mac and cheese for my number two.
Okay. Different.
Come on.
But in the summer, macaroni salad.
Solid. That's a good summertime.
Mm-hmm.
Good summertime.
The burger hot off the grill.
I'm going to go with one that's also feels like a seasonal one, but I feel like this one should be eaten year round and not just on Thanksgiving Day.
Oh.
Give me some stuffing.
Stuffing.
It is the star of Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
That with the mac and cheese, because it's a side, but it is the star of Thanksgiving. And it should be eaten more than just on Thanksgiving Day. Stuffing is my number 3 pick.
They had to add the turkey in to be a delivery system for the stuffing.
Give you some protein to balance out all the carbs you're eating.
Okay. This is number 4.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also going to go with a typically eaten side dish on Thanksgiving, sweet potato casserole, because you're eating a side, but you feel like you're eating dessert.
You do love your sweet potato casserole. Yeah. I'm not.
It's not for everybody.
It's not for everybody.
But for those of it is 4.
When you're down to pick 4 and 5 in the draft, then you start picking those specialty ones that there might be someone listening that you just won them over. It doesn't matter what 5 I pick. You won them over.
We're going to lost some with that one.
I'm going to slightly different than your bread and butter. Give me the garlic bread.
Yeah.
Garlic bread, man.
Mm-hmm. Nothing
like spaghetti and meatballs with a side of garlic bread with it.
You're right. You can sink your teeth into it.
Mm-hmm. Talk about satisfying.
Yep. And
final pick right here.
I'm going to go with it's basic but solid. A good fruit salad.
I did consider that because that's
refreshing.
another summer. You got a nice summertime lineup there.
Yeah.
With your macaroni salad and the. All right.
I didn't get I'll let you get to yours.
My final pick. Bacon. Bacon. That's the greatest fifth pick of all time.
I didn't expect that from you.
I'm not a huge bacon fan, but I know the people, and I gotta give the people what they want, and they want bacon drafted in this, and so I gotta give them bacon. I will always choose ham or sausage over bacon at breakfast. I'm not a bacon lover. My favorite place for bacon is on a burger. It elevates, like a bacon cheeseburger is superior.
Next level.
But as far as breakfast sides go, it's like the most iconic one out there. So we're jumping into another series of episodes here, and this will not be a series like the last one. We kind of did 4 episodes in a row on porn and mental health. This one we will kind of break up and sporadically drop these episodes in between other episodes that are kind of going on. I don't think there'll be any interviews as a part of this series. This will all kind of be just solo teaching type things. But it's a passage. It's one of the most famous Bible passages in the world that even non-Christians read this at weddings and stuff like that. And it's 1 Corinthians 13, which is famously known as the love chapter, right? And so even if you're not a follower of Jesus, a Christian, there is so much wisdom in the Bible that you don't need to believe in Jesus. You don't need to believe in God in order to read this and realize that there is wisdom and just good moral stuff in there, right? And so it's if you're interested in being a better father, being a better husband, and you don't believe in Jesus, you have no interest in him whatsoever, I encourage you, stick around, listen to this, because even if you don't, this is a great description of what love is. And for us who are believers, are followers of Jesus, this is a description of Jesus, right? Like what Paul lays out here in 1 Corinthians 13 is a description of Jesus. And he is the perfect embodiment of all of the things that Paul talks about in this. Paul is the author that wrote 1 Corinthians and 2 Corinthians, which were letters to the church in Corinth. And as he's writing this and as I'm reading it, he talks about all these things that love is, and all of them represent Jesus. They are a reflection of who Jesus is. And so as we read this and as we spend several different episodes kind of dissecting this, what I want us to keep in mind ultimately is that as we grow in each of these areas, we grow to look more and more like Jesus, right? And I think the power of his Holy Spirit helps us do that. This is not something that's just easily achieved on our own, or even really fully achieved on our own at all. It is by the power of the Holy Spirit living inside of us that enables us to grow in these different areas. And so as Paul is writing about this description of love, he says this in verses 4 through 7. He says, love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. It is not irritable, and it keeps no record of being wronged. It does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. And so as you read that, it's like kind of this list of things that, let's be honest, you would want in your partner, right? Like if you're married, this is a list of things that you would want out of your spouse. If you're single or you're dating, like this is a list of things that you would want from your future spouse, a potential partner. Like these are things that you would look at, right? Like love is patient. Yeah, I would want my spouse to be patient. Love is kind. I would want my spouse to be kind. Love endures. It is always hopeful. Like, yeah, I want my partner to be hopeful in us. I want our love to endure. Like, this is a list of things that, wherever you fall on the spectrum of believing in God, like these are a list of things that it's like you would look at and say, like, yeah, I would want my spouse, my future partner, my current partner to embody all these things. And if we would want our spouse to embody all of these things, we should also expect that out of ourselves. that if you want your wife to be a patient and kind wife that doesn't get jealous or boastful or proud or rude, that doesn't demand her own way, like you should be a man that is patient and kind, that isn't jealous or boastful or proud or rude, that doesn't demand his own way. Like if we would want and expect this out of our spouse, we should expect it out of ourselves as well. Later on in this chapter, in verse 11, Paul says, when I was a child, I spoke and thought and reasoned as a child, but when I grew up, I put away childish things. And to me, I get this idea of, you know, as kids, we watch these fairy tale movies, right? And maybe all the guys didn't watch them. Like I had three little sisters, so these movies were always on, like Cinderella and Snow White and Beauty and the Beast. And all of these movies were always on in my house, right? But like those are these fairy tale movies where it's like once you find the right one, everything's all right. Right? Like once Cinderella finds her prince, once the beast turns into a regular good looking dude, like everything is all right. Once you find the one, it's like any rom com is based on this premise that once you find the right one, everything will be all right. But that's a childish way of thinking. Because you know, and I know that no matter what happens at the end of that rom com, like in real life goes on, and there's still conflict, there's still troubles, there's still fights that are going to happen. And it's not this fairy tale live happily ever after sort of thing. And Paul understood that. He said, when I grew up, I put away childish things. And so love isn't just a feeling, right? Like love is an action, love is a decision. Like we can feel loved. We can feel like we're in love. We can feel like we are loving our spouse, but it is a decision that we have to wake up every single day and choose love, because it's really easy to feel unloving when we're angry, when we're upset. And so, what I want to do with some of these episodes is break down some of these characteristics. We might not go through all of them, we might, but break down some of these descriptions that Paul writes in verses 4-7. And the first one he writes is love is patient. And I think that's interesting that he starts with that one, because that's not the first thing that I think about when I think of love is patience. But the best decision, or the best definition that I ever heard of patience was by Andy Stanley. He said, patience is choosing to move at someone else's pace. Patience is choosing to move at someone else's speed. Chase is choosing to move at someone else's pace. And that, as men, like, let's be real, that is a challenge, bro. Like choosing to slow down. I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. Moving at the pace of a 1-year-old is one of the hardest things I do on a daily basis. Like when we drop my 3-year-old off at preschool, like, and then, me and Corey, we're walking back to the van, like he just stops and he'll like look at the windows and he'll look at the blade of grass and he'll look down at the rocks he's kicking and like he'll look up at me, and it's like he's taking 16 years to walk back to the van. Meanwhile, it's 4 degrees outside. Right? And I'm like, all right, you might not feel cold, but I'm pretty cold out here. Like, can we move it up a little bit? It is not easy to move at someone else's pace, because your natural pace is your natural pace, right? Like that's obviously, like, you have your own pace. And as guys, we typically have a faster pace than women, right? When it comes to talking, when it comes to walking, when it comes to getting ready to go out, when it comes to moving physically in a relationship, we tend to have a faster pace than our partners do. However, choosing to move at someone else's pace is a demonstration of love. And choosing to move at my 1-year-old's pace and take 8 years to walk back to the van after drop off, or getting his shoes on taking that long to happen, like all of that is a demonstration of love towards my son. Choosing to listen to all of my wife's work stories, I love you, babe. Choosing to wait for her to get ready to leave for church, choosing to move at her pace is a demonstration of love. Do I tell stories a lot faster than my wife? Absolutely I do. I cut to the point of it, right? Like if there's no point, like I'm not telling a story without a point, right? My wife does not always choose to do that. I love her. I will never cut her off from a story though, unless there's like something urgent that I need to do. But like, I will never cut her off from telling me a story just because I want to move at her pace. It's a demonstration of love to listen to her stories. Do I get value from hearing stories? Not a whole lot, honestly. She knows this. If you're listening, babe, like you know this. But I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna listen to your stories. It's cool. Tell me your stories because when I start choosing my own pace over her pace and I start cutting her off from the stories, she starts shutting down. She starts getting reserved. She's not gonna feel free and trusting to open up and share those stories with me. And then what else is she gonna shut down about? If I'm not willing to move at her pace and listen to her stories and wait for her and be patient on her, it's going to start shutting her down. But when I choose to move at her pace, it's a demonstration of love. It's a demonstration of understanding. I am now moving at her pace and choosing her over myself. Love is a sacrifice. Love is always, if you are going to be loving, you are always going to be sacrificing. People that say love doesn't hurt, that's bull, man. Look at the cross if you think love doesn't hurt. Like Jesus went through pain. That's how he demonstrated his love to us. It was a painful demonstration of love. And so whenever we love, there is sacrifice involved in that, and there is commitment involved in that. And so choosing to move at her pace is a sacrifice. It is. Is it like the biggest sacrifice in the world to sit there and listen to her stories? No, it's not. But it is a great demonstration of love. And it's a simple, easy demonstration of love that I can act out every single day. As a man, it can be very easy to rush our family to move at our pace, to try to speed them up, to try to rush our kids and rush our wife to match our pace instead of slowing our gears down to match theirs. As men, we are most times, 90% of the time, we're going to have the fastest motor in our house. We're going to want to move the quickest. But it is a decision when we want to do that. That's not a choice. That's a feeling. None of us choose to be impatient. We feel impatient, right? But we don't choose to be impatient. We choose patience. Very rarely do I feel patient, right? I have to make a conscious decision to choose patience in that moment. We feel impatient. But making a conscious decision to say, hey, I'm going to slow down, I'm going to match your pace, that is a demonstration of love. That is an act of love that we can show on an easy, regular, consistent basis to our kids, to our wife. And look, remember what Paul said at the end of the chapter. He said, when I was a child, I spoke and thought and reasoned as a child, but when I grew up, I put away childish things. Demanding others move at our pace is a childish way to live. But slowing down, choosing to be patient and match the pace of those around us that we claim to love and care for is a manly way to demonstrate our love to them. And Jesus chose to have patience and demonstrate patience with us. In 1 Timothy, Paul is again writing a letter to Timothy this time. And he's talking about how I am the worst of sinners and kind of recapping the gospel message that Jesus came into the world for us. And in verse 16, he said, God had mercy on me so that Christ Jesus could use me as a prime example of his great patience with even the worst sinners. Jesus, when I think of the characteristics of God, patience isn't the first one that comes to mind, right? Like he is loving, he is caring, he is good, he is faithful, he is strong, he's wise. Like these are all the things I think of when I think of the characteristics of God. Patience is not one that usually cracks my top 10. But praise God for his patience, right? Like I have no reason to deserve his patience, yet he is patient with me every single day. And like I said, when I think of what Paul wrote here on love is patient and kind, it is not jealous or boastful. Like these describe Jesus. This description of love is the description of Jesus. So the more that we grow in patience, the more we are looking like Jesus looks. And so my encouragement to you this week, demonstrate love, demonstrate patience, move at the pace of the people around you, move at the pace of your kids, Move at the pace of your wife. Slow down as much as you need to make them feel loved, to make them feel safe, and to make them feel connected to you. As always, we appreciate you joining us. We appreciate you hanging out. Take care of yourself. Take care of your family. This is Kicks and Minivans.